Good evening. It's a huge pleasure to be welcoming you to this inaugural lecture in Christchurch's 500th anniversary lecture series, exploring the critical role of higher education in shaping tomorrow's world. It's a delight to be here in the Royal Society. This is rather a momentous day. Not only has this nation and other parts of Europe been celebrating the anniversary and the climax of this nation's VE Day celebrations, we also have an announcement of something which is very dear to our Vice-Chancellor's heart, as she is well known to be an active and practicing Catholic. Habemus Papam. We have a new American Pope, Robert Francis Prevost, an Augustinian who served as a member of the Dicastery for Bishops, has a long experience as a missionary in Peru, and is taking the papal name of Leo the 14th. So I hope all of you will remember that not only were you at this amazing inaugural lecture, but that it was the day that Leo the 14th was elected. These lectures are, as a series, designed to offer all those who hear them food for thought as we think about the future of Christchurch's key objectives of education, research, and worship, and set them against a current local and international political landscape. It's a great joy to welcome Professor Irene Tracey this evening. Future lectures will be elsewhere in the UK, in Oxford and Manchester, in Berlin and New York. And our speakers include Dame Sarah Gilbert, the Right Reverend Rowan Williams, Richard Stengel, and Jerome Booth. And we're looking forward to very lively and thought-provoking conversations. As all of you who are alumni of Christchurch know, this is the 500th anniversary of the foundation of Cardinal College by Thomas Wolsey, the foundation that was later re-established as Christchurch by Henry VIII. All of us in Christchurch inherit an extraordinary heritage featuring some of modern history's most distinguished figures and finest thinkers. Our alumni include kings, 13 British prime ministers, 2 Nobel laureates so far, and individuals influential in all areas of discourse, art and research, from music, theology, poetry and sport, to maths, medicine and philosophy. Multiple changes have been made over the 500 years since we were founded, but our mission to advance religion, education and learning remains unchanged. We dwell a lot on our distinguished history, but we also talk about how our constant, unchanging mission still drives us as we welcome each new generation of students. All Oxford colleges are privileged to provide spaces in which scholars at different stages of learning can interact with and inspire one another. If the collegiate system didn't already exist to offer an extraordinary place for interdisciplinary encounter, I imagine that modern universities might be thinking about inventing them. So our vocation is to provide an environment in which world-class teaching and research flourish together across the sciences, social sciences, and humanities. Our mission is to nurture both that study and the individual students, talented young adults who go on to make such an impact on the world. In this vein, in March this year, we opened the doors of our new Centre for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, named after a very competitive competition between current Christchurch students as Oxford Edge. The centre sits at the very heart of Oxford at 37 St Giles, and it encapsulates the spirit of collaboration that we prize so much. At Oxford Edge, students from across the whole collegiate university can be educated in the core principles of entrepreneurship. They're being taught by tutors from Christchurch and from across the university, including from the Said Business School. We're very grateful to Blenheim Chalcott for underwriting the pilot 3-year project for this centre, and so students can benefit from Blenheim Chalcott's network of experienced entrepreneurs and their own educational programmes. The centre provides space, mentorship and training to help students take their first steps towards being the entrepreneurs of the future, enabling them to transfer their skills into the world beyond Oxford after their degrees. We're very proud that opportunities like this can be offered at Oxford Edge to hundreds of undergraduates studying at Christ Church, but also students across the whole university. But we're very conscious that it's at the graduate level where many of our students begin to make the breakthroughs that will genuinely change the world, alter our way of thinking, challenge preconceived ideas. It's as graduates that the academic leaders of the future begin to build their own careers. In Christ Church, we're very conscious of how much is still to be done in ensuring fair access to graduate education, building on the work that we've done already to open and widen participation at undergraduate level. Graduate access has tended until now to attract less attention than access for undergraduates, but it matters enormously. And the challenge here is very urgent. The cost of a postgraduate education is too often a barrier to those who wish to study with us, and a barrier to those whom we helped to an undergraduate degree, who then find that they can't go any further. One factor here is the price and accessibility of accommodation in Oxford, especially graduate accommodation. It can be exceedingly high, and that's something that we're actively working to address. Christ Church and our development office, in collaboration with the wider university, are engaged in fundraising to support the expansion of financial assistance for graduates. We do already have some existing scholarships for graduate students kindly supported by individual alumni, including Jonathan Stone, Simon Hale, and Emily Campbell. Christ Church is determined to make graduate study an attractive and realistic prospect, to ensure that it's not just an option open only to the wealthy or privileged. And as the Royal Societies and the government start to ramp back their graduate support, this could not be a more urgent time to be investing in this. The difference that a college like Christ Church can make has never been more important. Today's very complicated global challenges demand sophisticated answers and true innovation. Colleges like ours attract experts and thinkers who have the capacity and the time and space to provide answers, and we provide a setting in which they can collaborate with others. That's why in this 500th year, we're making the most of the assets that we have in our cultural and intellectual heritage, dwelling on the richness of our tutorial system and the community of scholars at Oxford, part of the university. At Christ Church, part of the University of Oxford. And all this helps to explain why universities, especially Oxford, and particularly places like Christ Church, will make an impact in tackling today's challenges and looking towards the future. For 5 centuries, Christ Church has been a place where future leaders and innovators have learned, have thrived, and have worshipped God. This anniversary programme reflects our heritage, and it looks forward to Christ Church's work, creating new opportunities for future generations to advance the arts, the culture, and sciences. And it's a huge honour for me to be leading Christ Church as we mark this historic milestone. I'm looking forward very much to welcoming alumni, students, and audiences around the world to these lectures and our other events in this celebratory year. We're immensely proud that Irene, an honorary student at Christ Church, because Irene taught medicine, was a tutor and official student in the early 2000s at Christ Church, and we were delighted that she accepted our nomination to be elected to this position. It recognises the significance of her contribution to medical science and to the collegiate university. Please welcome Irene Tracey, CBE, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cambridge, Professor of Anaesthetic Neuroscience in the Nuffield Department of Clinical Neurosciences, to speak on the critical role of higher education in shaping tomorrow's world. Irene.
I think you had a typo there. Just in case you were coming to hear the Vice-Chancellor of Cambridge, you're hearing the Vice-Chancellor of Oxford. I hope that's okay. Okay. Now listen, I was in that green suit earlier today, and I got changed before the Pope was announced. So this is not a papal outfit. Although it does look clearly like a papal outfit, but that was not planned or deliberate. I have to say the sweepstake at the church which I go to, which is one of the university Catholic churches, not that Catholics bet, or a gambling people. But the sweepstake was that it would be announced tomorrow. So anyway, it is announced, and we do have a new Pope, and that is a wonderful thing. I'm absolutely thrilled. Thank you so very much, Sarah, for the invitation, and to the development team to come and speak to you tonight, and to you all for turning up, but also for just everything you do to not only support this wonderful, brilliant college, but also the university, and just how proud we are of you as alum of our institution, or not, for those of you who are partners and maybe not alum, for everything that you are doing to contribute to the world in using the skills that we believe that we give you and still give our students out there to make the world a better place. So I'm very, very grateful to speak to you tonight. I'm also very proud of the fact that I have this wonderful association, and it was my greatest honour to accept being an honorary student at the college, and it's such a joy to go back, and I do feel it's a safe space for me to go and just be with friends and with colleagues, and I feel very much at home there. I had 7 very, very happy years being a medical tutor there. In fact, it was my first post, so it's very meaningful to me, the college, because it was where I started the journey of being fully tenured and therefore secure, and those who are in the room who are academics will know how important that step is. So it's a place that, that I feel very warm to. And I actually did my interview there a week after my second child was due. And so it was a fairly hairy set of interviews as I was wobbling around, very, very pregnant, but luckily he came late, so all is good. Anyway, I'm going to just go through a little bit, if you don't mind. I just have a couple of notes. What we're doing right now and how we're evolving the institution and how that matches my reflections on what our role is at this point in time and where we might be in 500 years. Obviously, we're celebrating the 500th anniversary, and sometimes you have to pinch yourself in Oxford when you just remember just how old the place is. One gets reminded of that because we are extraordinarily old, and with that comes an enormous privilege to have that huge gulf of history, 900 years. You're early. I was at Merton. You know, that's proper old, right? 756. We won't get into competitions, but you know, we can draw on that extraordinary history, and we can learn from that. And I do think in current climes, so often we are reminded, are we not, on a daily basis in all sorts of areas, how we don't seem to remember our history or learn from it and benefit from that learning. I think we do that well in the university. And what we don't do, which might be a surprise to you from maybe how things get presented often, or just the sheer look of the place of being very rigid and old with the great stone walls, is that it's just a place that's static for 900 years. It's actually one of the most innovative, changing places you could imagine. And certainly I would say, having been, well, I've been there all my career, but yeah, I was 2 years at Harvard, and obviously I collaborate and work with others in other universities. One of the things that has kept me in Oxford is the fact that actually internally it is constantly changing, it is always innovating, it is always pushing itself, it is always changing. It doesn't look like that from the outside, but that is how basically we stay number 1, which I'm very proud to say in our favourite ranking system, we still are number 1, and long may that last. Actually, I think we're going to have to drop off this year because it's starting to get a little bit embarrassing, I think, for the Times Higher. But the QS rankings, which is one of the sort of main ones that people actually look at, we're always in the top 5. In fact, in terms of what I call a full-blooded, full-fat university, which is you do everything, medical school, physical sciences, humanities, and social sciences, we are number 1. Cambridge is somewhere down there, and Harvard is down there. And then you have the sort of more technical ones, just because the way the rankings get done. Rankings do matter. It is an important thing to think about that. But and whilst we absolutely do not chase rankings, because we're more confident than that, and we're more purposeful than that, and we're very clear about what our mission is. The reality is they do matter because they do attract the very best of the best, and that is our job. Our core business plan is to attract the very best students from wherever, to have the very best staff and retain the very best staff from wherever, and to provide the best teaching we can and do the best research we can, and make sure that when people are with us, student or faculty, they thrive and they can fulfill their brilliance and their ambition. That's the business model, frankly, and that's what we try to achieve, and therefore some of these things which I jest about do actually matter. But one does reflect, you said about the tutorial system and whether others would set it up now. Actually, I don't think they would. I have to say, people skirted with the idea during the pandemic when we really came to the fore, and breaking the collegiate university down into those wonderful, fantastic devolved units of the colleges that provide that closeness of teaching and pastoral care and community and family. we were able to really provide an exceptional, if you like, pandemic for our students in a way that just wasn't possible in the large campus universities. And certainly many of them, US institutions alike, would come to us and say, you know, what does it take to do this? It's a very hard model to deliver. It's a very expensive model to deliver. The reason it works, and it works so brilliantly, is we have spent 500 years, 900 years evolving it to make sure it works. So it's not something that comes overnight, and we're not complacent about not just its importance, but also how we must preserve it, but also continue to evolve it. So when we think about the great collegiate university and the fact that we are doing really well in whatever metric you would like to assess us on, and it really is in great shape, and I'm very grateful to be the Vice-Chancellor of this university because of the wonderful colleagues that I have, because it is a collegiate university, because that is that sense of ownership and autonomy at the college level, at the department level, and that means you get brilliant people with brilliant leadership taking on these units and doing a most fantastic job in delivering our core mission of teaching and research and providing impact and leadership in the world. It's a model that, again, is one that we have fought hard to preserve. It's one that is delivering in every regard, and we are in basically fantastic shape. But we must continue to think about what does the next 500 years look like. And so how are we evolving our thinking? So let me just talk through sort of the teaching, the research, and then some of the impact and leadership roles we take. Obviously, our core mission is to deliver our teaching through the tutorial system. That is still our USP, and that is not going to change. And I will certainly, having been born from it, having been an undergrad and grad at the university and been a tutor, I know how impactful and important it is. It is a hard model to continue and deliver, and it's really hard for the faculty to deliver it because the demands on them are so much more than maybe looking demographically at some of the more seasoned people in the room. It was the case in your day. The demands on research delivery, the demands on pastoral care for students, the demands to also be running 5 companies on the side and to be a great, communicator and public understanding, and. It's a tough gig to be an associate professor tutorial fellow, and we are looking actively at how we can maintain the delivery of that closeness of teaching, but also make it a manageable job. So we're very mindful of the demands of the job, but we're also very mindful of just how precious it is and how impactful it is, and actually how, again, thinking back on the pandemic, whilst we were swiftly able to move everything online, miraculously almost for Oxford speed, we'd be 10 years arguing how to do things online or put finals online, but we did it in 2 months because we had no option. Just shows how much we can move at pace should we need to. But post the pandemic, I was really surprised and pleased at just the speed at which our students wanted to come back, to be geographically placed, to be in the college, to have that tutorial experience, to have that closeness of teaching. And that is something that we continue to do, and we continue to do very, very well. And it's one of the huge draws, frankly, for students to come to us. We are a very undergraduate UK university, quite exceptionally, actually, in the UK higher education sector, which predominantly has more of a blend of international and UK students. In Oxford, we are 80% UK students at the undergraduate level. That's quite unusual. And it does mean that we have to support and subsidise that quite a lot because the student fee, frankly, doesn't come close to covering what it costs to actually deliver all that teaching and pastoral care and subsidised food and heating and et cetera, but we will maintain that, and I'm very grateful that we can maintain that and we can still deliver that exceptional teaching to largely British kids, because I have financial levers that my counterparts in the other Russell Group, which is the name for the research-intensive universities in the UK, don't have. I have philanthropy from the kindness of our alumni. I have the largest university press, Oxford University Press. I have an endowment, which we have a good drawdown from. And increasingly, we have licensing and spin-out companies providing a fourth financial lever. This is why we are able to just about meet the headwinds that are currently with us, and you can hear in the press how many universities, 10 of our big universities in this country, are laying off staff. We anticipate that within a year there'll be upwards of 20,000 academics made redundant. I'm afraid it's very largely hitting the humanities and social sciences. We are resilient to that because of the generosity of our alumni, because of the university press, because of the endowment that former colleagues have built and colleges have, and because of increasingly these other levers like the spin-out and access. So we will be able to maintain that tutorial teaching, that closeness of teaching, and we will be able to weather those headwinds that are hitting some of the other colleagues of mine in the sector when it comes to, again, that balance of students. We are very international when it comes to graduates, so then it flips. We're 70% international when it comes to our graduate students, and we welcome that. We welcome them to be the next, as you said, part of that pipeline, many of them staying in academic research or training further in that and then going out in the world and making a difference there. And of course, the importance of having international students with us is not just because we want the best talent to come in and be part of our community. They bring extraordinary cultural benefits to our British students, to us as faculty teaching them, and it is one of the most important roles the higher education sector plays, which I keep reminding government on a weekly basis about, particularly with the Home Office Immigration White Paper coming out, where they're potentially going to target visas against international students. Do not underestimate the soft diplomacy or the soft power that our international students play in the world. Oxford produces more world leaders than any other university. A quarter of the world leaders currently have come out of our top universities in the UK. We generate people like you who go off and become fabulous leaders in your areas of work. And we have many who are running countries, Mark Carney, who's a mate of mine, being one, just recently, for example. But when I go around on my alumni visits, as I'm sure is the case for you when you go internationally, people fly from all over the place to be there, to gather, because they have had such a wonderful experience in the college, in the department, in Britain, and they are extraordinarily fond forever of that experience. It is highly impactful, it is deeply imprinting, and that soft power lasts a lifetime. And my goodness, if we're going to sort this world out and think about how do we use the university sector, not just for its teaching, its research and solving global challenges, we should also reflect that one of the really important roles we play is we are one of the biggest conduits for that swirling around at a very critical stage of a young person's life of diplomacy, of learning about each other, so people's understanding how they actually are, so that when they go off wherever they're going to go, they will have that memory. And downstream, that will have an effect, and it will be lasting. And that is a huge role that we play. It's one I'm very proud that we play. It's one that doesn't get spoken about enough, but it's an enormously important one that our international students contribute. And that's why we're also passionate about the importance of, again, making the right decision, not the knee-jerk political convenient decision when it comes to things like access of international students. And just to finish that little piece there, as I say, whilst we're not vulnerable to the financial vagaries of international students dropping, that is the reason that you have 10 of our big universities as a country now having laid off hundreds of their staff, is because the international student uptake has dropped because of the rhetoric that has been given to the world about how unwelcome they would be here. And when they have built a financial model because they have had to, because of the fact that the fee is regulated and hasn't changed for 12 years, they were left with no option than to take more international students to help compensate and help offset some of the costs. And if those students go, your financial model is broken. So we have a real problem. We really have a problem in this country of the financial model of our higher education sector. It has been forced to be dependent on that. We welcome the benefit that they bring, but we can't go on like that in the sector. We are all right for the reasons I've given you, but we stand very, very much together with our colleagues in the other sector, because at the end of the day, we're sharing students. Students who are undergraduates in some universities will come to us as graduates. We move faculty around. It is important for them that Oxford and Cambridge, which are a bit different, are strong, and it's just as important for me that the sector is strong. And that's why we work very closely with our colleagues, and we're championing the need to think about the financial models going forward, because we really do need to address this in this country. And that is a difficult conversation for us to have, and we need to have it. We need to really decide as a country, as a society, what do you want from the higher education sector, and how are you willing to pay for it? It's not a vote winner to say you're going to pour more money and change the fee structure and not put it into the NHS. I get that. And we need to work harder as a higher education sector to tell our story better, to make people really realise, if they really have no contact with university, why actually universities matter. What is their role? What are they contributing to you in your anchor region, as an employer, as a net contributor in terms of, again, economic wealth, not least then also, of course, the impact of the research that we do. And we've just got to get much better at that. And that's one of the things in the 2.5 years I've been in this post has been my learning, is in this role, realising actually sometimes the sector waits too late to get into the bun fight or to the discussion, and we've just got to get smarter and better at actually telling and sharing our story. And I do think with the world right now, with the media focusing on certain things all the time, this is a really great time for us to be just talking about other stuff, because we've got wonderful things to say about what we're doing and what we're thinking about and what we're discovering about the world and how we're also making the world a better place. We should be talking to you and to broader society and to the next generation of people about those things, so that there's a counter-narrative to the narrative that is dominating media. And that's something, again, I hope, until you're bored of hearing somebody from Oxford University is, once again, on the Today programme or blah, blah, blah. Actually, nobody listens to the Today programme outside of this demographic, so we've got to get onto other platforms. Anyway, we've got to tell our story better. And this is important because of, again, a disconnect and a recognition that we've got to help society. It's not their fault. Realise what the benefits are that we bring. And then we've got to think about how does that feed into then the government response as to how much they're going to seriously back the universities. I'm not saying there aren't, and there hasn't been some bad actors and back playing in it. I don't want to go into there. But when you just take some of the main universities that you would be surprised of, it is a perilous time for them at the minute financially. And I am thankful that I am the Vice-Chancellor of this university, because I'm not there yet. I don't think I'll get there, but it's tight. It still is tight. So that's sort of broadly just where things are, higher education. Those are some of the pressures at the moment. That's some of the areas that we want to, of course, support and focus on. But we're trying to do different things beyond, of course, what you've heard a lot about in terms of widening access. And I had the great joy of being with Sarah just the other week up in Blackbird-Leys, an area that's outside of Oxford, which is quite socioeconomically deprived, not high attainment in terms of education. And for years, Christchurch, you will be proud to know, has worked in partnership with a charity called Into University, which is to take some of our students and to support financially kids to come after school to a community centre there where they get taught, they get inspired, they get topping up of their education to help get them just to a higher level of aspiration, but also opportunity. And it was the 10th anniversary of the effort that Christchurch has made, combined with the university with that, with a broadening, remit about the importance of bringing education to that talent wherever it is. And the fact that we've got to roll up our sleeves and actually get out there and really help support and put our money where our mouth is and make sure that we find that brilliant talent. And even if they don't come to us, we increase their chances of going to higher education and benefiting from that. And they had some of their alumni come back to speak about the different degrees they're doing around the country. And it was very, very inspiring. And I congratulate Christchurch for having the vision to do that. So, of course, widening access is always something that we're doing. And what we're noticing, I would say, with that broadening of students coming to us with an educative background that maybe isn't as strong as some of our students have in their school system, we need to help them on course and get them onboarded so that they can cope with what still is a very intense degree. We're still doing it in 8 weeks. There's lots of discussion as to whether we should do a reading week or have an extra term. And actually, we can talk about that in questions. But our degrees are still hard. They're really, really tough. And we push the kids rightly, as they should be. And they love it, actually. So that's good. And we'll keep doing that. But it is a fact that, they are coming to us. And I think particularly in some of the subjects like physics and maths, it's going to be hard to do a physics and maths degree or engineering degree if you just haven't, done further maths at school or you haven't had much maths being pushed at you. So more and more realising how much we have to help the students before they arrive with us and quickly on course, get them up to speed. These are bright kids because we've picked them to be bright. We're really good at that, but we need to help them very quickly. And then they thrive on the degree rather than struggling all the way through and getting there in the end and not really having a great time. It's important that when we do bring students in from a broader background, we make sure that when they are here, they thrive and that we can deliver for them. And there is more that we need to do, and certainly going forward, that's a big part of our plans. But also our students want to not just stay deep in their subject area. As I said, 80% of our undergraduates are from the UK system. So they have made the great divide at 15, 16. Am I humanities? Am I, STEM? Or am I sort of social sciences? And because of that, we have a unique cohort. And you go off into the world And, those who've gone down the more humanities route, you sort of dock maths at 15, and those who've gone down the science route, you haven't written a sentence grammatically correctly since you were 15. Trust me, I've run a lab 35 years. I often joke I've run more of an English language lab than I have a neuroscience lab, because they really can't write. And so it's a problem, because to be an academic, you do a lot of communication and writing. So we have a problem. And our students are bright as buttons. And of course, we don't want to change the deep knowledge learning of a singular degree. But they have bandwidth and they have appetite and they have a recognition that the world is, whether you like it or not, quite data heavy. And the world's complex. And you need to understand what it is to make your discovery have impact or change policy. You've got to be able to tell a story. And we don't skill them up in those skill sets as well as we could and should. So we've been experimenting with extracurricular widening skills through a colloquium, which I launched. It's called the Vice-Chancellor's Colloquium. We decided to anchor it on a subject area to make it less dry. So we centered it on climate. It's in its second year of running. It's been hugely popular. My biggest problem is I just don't know how to scale it up and roll it out across the whole university. It is massively oversubscribed the moment we release the application portal, with double the numbers within 24 hours. We've doubled the numbers from last year to this year. And what it is something that we've never done in our 900-year history. So during Hillary term, we take now 400 students from the undergraduate pool, pseudo-randomly selected, and they are drawn from every subject area and every college. And they come to the Maths Institute where we can host about 400 students, and you have a room full of linguists, mathematicians, medics, philosophers, historians, classicists, all in one learning environment. And every other Wednesday, they get taught for 2 hours on a Wednesday afternoon between 5 and 7 by 2 professors who are drawn from the humanities or social sciences or physical sciences or medicine. And those 2 lecturers will deliver content around the topic of climate from their disciplines and perspectives. And so one will be more physics and mathsy, and one will be more humanities policy. And then they have a debate and a discussion. We try to make it a bit edgy, so the students also see what good debate looks like, because that's another piece of work we must continue to do, is to learn how to argue well, with courtesy, with respect, to take other views that you feel uncomfortable with, but to be able to deliver that in a courteous manner and to receive that in a courteous manner. So they get that sort of on the sly for free as well. And then they have a discussion with that room of students. They love it. The faculty love it because they're teaching students that they never have come across before. Then every other week, our graduates then do problem sets, and they do policy things, and they do tutorials, and colleges take them in, and then they do a project, and then they get a digital certificate to say they've done the course. Turns out, actually, it was the climate was the hook. I thought it was because they wanted to be skilled up in maths, and historians really did want to learn what a correlation was or a probability. But it turns out that wasn't. It was really climate. They do want to learn about climate, and that's a fine thing too. So we've kept going with the climate. We'll probably broaden it out to some other topics like AI, which would lend itself for cross-curricular. But what it does is it tells us that we need to be providing more and broader educative offerings for our students. 1, they want it. 2, they have the bandwidth for it. And also the faculty enjoy doing it. So I'm really thrilled with what Christchurch is doing around St. Giles, 37 St. Giles and innovation. I'm going to say a lot more on innovation in a moment, because it also is inculcating the skill sets around entrepreneurship, which are really brilliant generalizable skill sets that will benefit our students in whatever career they go into. And what I hope through these extra things that we're doing and piloting and building is that our students are attractive enough in the workplace, but this will just take them up an even notch above, that they'll leave, one, with, again, confidence in data analytical skills. They'll have confidence in, again, skills around storytelling and, the importance of how to make behaviour change happen through policy. And they'll also know something about climate, which they're going to have to face and deal, because we've made such a mess of it, we need them to sort it out. We're doing a lot around online courses in education. That's a huge opportunity for Oxford. We have about 25 departments now that have been doing a various array of online digital courses that can either be through a matriculated degree, a full sort of throated one, or say a diploma or a certificate. This is a huge growth area and a huge opportunity for us. So we're now at the point where we're bringing that a little bit together. We've created an online digital teaching hub where we can help deliver those departments who want to do more of that, make sure that we've got the standard correct and that we're learning good practice, because of course the brand is huge. And of course, everybody in the world would love to have a University of Oxford, Christchurch emboldened certificate. So how do we make sure that we can expand that at the pace that's appropriate for, again, the challenges of the workload? How can we make sure we maintain the quality of that and the brand of that? But the reach that we can have globally, teaching the world, sharing our knowledge, sharing our resources, it is untapped and it is really exciting, not just for the knowledge transfer, which as an educator I'm passionate about. It's also, frankly, a really great financial stream that will help enormously in some of the challenges that we face. So we're really thinking aggressively about that. Where we've been learning a lot about that is a department I want to just mention, which you probably wouldn't have come across in your undergraduate or graduate experience at the university, and it's the Department of Continuing Education. It's coming up to its 150th birthday in a couple of years. We're going to rename it Lifelong Learning because it's a bad name, that one. But this is a department I couldn't be more proud of. So on top of our 15,000 undergraduates, 15,000 graduates, that's the core group for the university, every year we enroll 16,000 part-time learners from age 18 to 90 globally. And these are people who are doing certificates, diplomas, sometimes a full degree, master's course. They do it part-time. They do a lot of it remotely, which is where we've been honing our online provision, and then they sometimes will come in pace. They are, frankly, my happiest degree days. No offence to my lovely undergraduates and graduates, but these people are extraordinary. The Sheldonian's filled with these people who come from every walk of life. They've maybe really struggled to get that done, or they've been a very successful and privileged individual who just fancies doing an art history degree in their retirement. They are from about 100 different countries. We have people who are, Hollywood stars. Emma Watson's doing a creative writing course right now, is going to stay on for a PhD, and everything in between. It's extraordinary, and we've been doing it for 150 years. We are the oldest continuing lifelong adult learning course and department in the country, but you probably didn't know it existed. And where did it all begin? Well, it all began 150 years ago, obviously, pretty much, when some of our academics decided it would be a good thing to get some of the books out the Bodleian, get on a train and go to Birmingham and meet the women who are coming out of the factories there and teach them because they wanted to learn. And again, it's this democratization of education. It's this important mission that we all have. It's not new. We talk about it as if it's a new cool thing and AI is going to democratize education. People say it. I don't know what it means. But, we are educators and we can't, it's compulsive to be an educator. You can't help but teach. Look at me now. I'm teaching you lots of things. And that's been always there. And this ability to want to engage, this is old. This was old back in Germany. This was in Vienna. That's why Vienna was such this hothouse of creativity, because the skill they had is the universities there weren't just for the faculty. They were actively out there teaching the community and society. We've sort of gone a bit in-house, and now we're trying to think about how can we go back to actually what was core to what we were, is that we should democratize education. Of course, there'll be a need to have people there and very focused, but there is a need for us to share our resources and our ability to teach. And we did that. We went up and we took the books and we taught the women coming out of the factories, and they were called the extension classes. And it's continued and continued. Of course, it's grown into this extraordinary thing. We're now going to align it and really beef it up and push it forward. But I wanted to share that with you because it's an extraordinary secret treasure that you should be very proud your university has. And it's something that we're really going to be building up and focusing on going forward and thinking again, how can we make sure that's fit for the future? How can that be part of that mission of our teaching and our education, and how can that be in addition to, of course, our core USP of students coming to us and being geographically placed and having the benefits of what they learn outside of the tutorial, which is just as important as what they learn in the tutorial, all the fun and the joy of learning to be with other people. How can we also deliver this for the public? And so there'll be more about that in future sort of missions for me. Let me pivot then to the research side of things. That's just going gangbusters. I'm a scientist by background. Obviously, I had to sort of leave that world behind, sadly. Not sadly, because I'm loving this job, I must say. I absolutely love it. So although it is a sadness for me not to be a scientist anymore, and I'm a fellow of this society, and it's been a real privilege to be a scientist and the work that we have done with the team. Just to reassure you, I'm not going to give up the job and go back into the lab. I really do love being Vice-Chancellor, and the trade was well worth it. And that wasn't a given until I started the job, so I'm relieved that that is the case. But the research that goes on in Oxford is quite outstanding. And obviously I knew a lot about the medical school because that's where I spent 35 years. I knew a little bit about the Maths and Physical Life Sciences division. It's lovely to see Roger here tonight, and my husband's a physicist in climate, so, you know, had lenses through there. I really didn't know too much about the research in the humanities and the social sciences, so what I do as Vice-Chancellor is I go around and I do deep dives. I visit the departments, I spend the afternoon, I meet the students, I meet the early faculty, the early career researchers, the support staff, and I get a good sense about what is going on in the departments, what their needs are, what's common, whether you're a physics department or a history department, what's unique to those departments, and it gives me a really good temperature sense. And it's given me also, frankly, a great opportunity just to learn a lot about just the research that is happening in those other divisions. And it is breathtaking. It is absolutely breathtaking what happens. It's almost, the challenge you have is how do we begin to even communicate this. I'm trying my best. I do this Fire and Wire podcast series. If you've not seen it on the alumni, we'll make sure that gets to you. I just did my one for this term yesterday. I was in the Ashmolean Museum with Zar Sturdish, who is the director there, and we picked 6 top things, and we went round and spent time talking about them and what they mean and how that contributes to an understanding of humanity. And I've been doing that, did robotics last 2 terms ago. That had 1.7 million hits. Somebody's listening to them. So it's just a small way that I can help you have a lens into the work that's going on in the department. So do reach out and look at those Fire and Wire episodes. Some of them are video, and some of them are just conversational. But it's a way I can pick out different academics and tell you what they're up to and what they're doing, and give you the excitement that I get. And I do think doing those visits and getting a sense of the research that's going on has helped me stay a bit calibrated compared to, say, my peers, some of whom, you know, rightly are worn out with the sort of stress of the job. But for me, I'm still as energized and buzzed as I was 2.5 years ago. And that's partly because I make sure I get out and I see what's going on, and I get very, very energized by that and inspired. And it also gives me a calibration that the university is in great shape. And then I go back to the day job where you're putting out all the fires. And I do the same with students. I do dog walks with the students around the uni parks, and I do breakfast with them, and it gives me another sense about how they're doing as well. But when it comes to the research, of course, high-ticket items, you've seen that we stepped up during the pandemic. We've probably bored you senseless of how much we've gone on about how fabulous we were as the only university in the world that was able to make a vaccine. We've done it again last year with the malaria vaccine. 2 very different stories, both from the vaccine group, from MedSci, just one of many of the discoveries that we're making there. The only extra bit, and you've of course got Sarah Gilbert, you know, in the college there, and a fantastic appointment, and she'll speak at length about that. But just maybe the bits that I'll just add to it was, you know, for that one, the speed at which we produced it, because we had to at that time, it is exceptional that a university, and we were the only university in the world that did it. And of course, everybody then was reminded why you need a research-intensive university and why it is that you have spent decades supporting scientists and training them and giving money for basic research and translational research, because you should, and then you're really grateful you did, because when the pressure hits, we can pivot and bring everybody out of that pandemic, which we did. It's still the most widely distributed vaccine. It's beaten any of the others. 2/3 in lower and middle income countries. Millions of doses being given, millions of lives have been saved. And we did the recovery trial. We did a trial at pace, speedily, that took an off-the-shelf drug, dexamethasone, and showed that that was effective. And that took the gravity of the illness down, and it got people back to work earlier. Again, the only university that did that. So just 2 pieces of thousands of examples I could give you. We've just done an economic analysis of what impact those vaccines have had. As you know, for the COVID one, we just did it at cost. So when the pandemic was raging, there was no money made for it. And so, again, another highly ethical and moral decision taken by your university, which was the right one to take at that time. Nobody should not get that vaccine because of cost. That was not the decision taken by other companies. But the university took that decision, and rightly so. And that's been its wide distribution and benefit. But when we look about the lives saved, if you do a very simple economic analysis and say, lives saved back to work by X weeks, or just lives saved so you can work for X years and contribute tax. Several trillion pounds have been contributed to the global economy because of those two contributions. And that's the power a research-intensive university can have. Not only can it get you out of jail quickly and save lives, but it can contribute in a massive scale. We don't tell that story enough. We haven't even bothered doing the analysis until we thought to do it, because we need to start always reminding people and governments and others, why we matter, why you must support us, and why we must continue with our mission. The malaria vaccines, I think, are just an even more beautiful story. Adrian Hill, he's been slogging away at that for 25 years. I think it epitomizes what it is to be an academic, to be a researcher, to have the curiosity that gets you up every day and you never give up. How many times must he have wanted, or his team, to give up? This is a really hard, COVID to a certain extent is an easy one, and Sarah would admit that biologically. Malaria is really, really tricky because of the biology. Very hard to make something because you're chasing your tail all the time. And that's why it's taken. That's why there hasn't really been very good effective ones. That's why it's been such a difficult one to take on. And they have never given up trying to find and create a vaccine that would, again, be easy to roll out, cheap to roll out, and could save loads of lives. And so pleased for him that after 20 odd years of slogging away in the lab, they've come up with something, and it's now being widely distributed across different African countries. We are saving lives already, and it's going to have an enormous impact. It is just extraordinary, and they really do all need the Nobel Prize, and we must get that to happen. But I could talk about our quantum work. I mean, our quantum work and our work in physics is just extraordinary. We are going to be rapidly taking a very, very world-leading position around our work in quantum. I know that we talk a lot about, the quantum computers and how that's going to just go a step change in our lives. It's probably going to be the biggest step change maybe than AI. And actually, we're quite poised to make that actually a reality. So look out for that, because that's moving at great pace. Chemistry, I mean, just extraordinary what's going on in our chemistry departments, completely novel fluorine chemistry, novel green chemistry to take on the climate challenge. And, I spin to the humanities, where, again, bringing together different interdisciplinary combinations of people to tackle some of the problems, whether it's unmasking extraordinary annotations on English scripts, because we're bringing it together with some of our wonderful imaging people to help them with that, or use of AI and decoding or predicting what might be on scripts that are incomplete. I could just go on and on about just the amazing things that are happening there. But we're very excited about our focus on the humanities because, of course, this year we will be making a very bold statement about our support for the humanities with the opening of our Schwarzman Centre for the Humanities. So at a time when, I've just said to you, upwards we think and predict, Universities UK, 20,000 academics and professional staff will lose their jobs in the higher education sector, targeting largely, I'm sorry to say, those of you from a humanities background, on the humanities and social sciences. Oxford is saying, no, not on our watch. We are going to go big and bold, and we're actually going to put them a great big building with humanities writ large on it, with Stephen Schwarzman in front, because he's paid for it all, most of it. And we're making a very, very big and bold investment and statement around our support for the humanities. So it's pleasingly for me as Vice-Chancellor, it is on budget and it is on time. It is stunning. It is on the site that we call the Radcliffe Quarter. So I don't know if you know where the Blackness School of Government is or where the old Radcliffe Infirmary was and the new Maths Institute. It's on that corner there. It is a stunning building. It's completely built from Britain. All the materials are local and it's been built sensitively. It is going to be, and it is, we're going to get the badge soon, the largest passive house building in Europe. It also, on top of providing the space where this Michaelmas term, all the students who will be arriving from history and English and modern languages and all the different humanities subjects, they'll all be in that building. That is where they're going to be. And faculty will be there to teach them. We've also created enormous public spaces that will be open all day for the public. A huge 500-person concert hall that's completely soundproofed and isolated and vibration-proof. Performing arts, black box studio. So we've got an opportunity also not just to create an environment befitting for our students and academics to celebrate the humanities and how brilliant they are and how important they are, but it's a great celebration for us to tell the world about why the humanities matter and why it matters for us to understand what it is to be human, particularly in a world where we're going very much down the AI route. We've got to remember that natural intelligence and being human is important. We mustn't lose sight of that. We've got to learn how to live alongside. And in fact, one of the key groups in that centre is the Centre for AI and Ethics. So it's a centre that has about 20 philosophers and ethicists and computer scientists in, who already, for 5 years ahead of the Schwarzman opening, have been thinking about what does it mean to live alongside AI as a human? What does it mean in terms of rights for robots? When somebody takes a drug that's been decided by an AI algorithm and it goes wrong and they die, who's liable? What's to blame? Where's the legal framework? Who's thinking about that? So this is the stuff that they've been doing, and we will accelerate that as part of that great celebration of the humanities with that building. And for sure, you know, if you're coming to meeting minds or alumni gatherings, there'll be lots of opportunities, because I dare say we'll be using that building relentlessly as a place not just to show off, but also it's just going to be a fabulous entertainment space. So when you do next visit Oxford, do please go and have a wander around. It's not open yet, but it'll be open in October, and then we will formally open it next April. Because of that concert hall, we are also with that public mission of helping tell the world why you need research, teaching, what we contribute. We're also building a cultural programme alongside it, and so we're going to be, we hope, the main destination outside of London for next generation up-and-coming talent, whether it's people who are poets, classical music, modern music, performing dancers, whatever it is, culture in its broadest sense. It's an experiment for us, and it's a bit of a gamble, but we're going to run a whole cultural programme in the city, for the region, for the country, and it will be in that Centre for the Humanities that we will be hosting that cultural programme. We had a wonderful event last night, actually, in the Sheldonian as part of that cultural programme. We're sort of trying to animate the idea that that's already happening. We were very lucky that a family gave us one of the rare signed manuscripts by Bach of his cantata for Easter and the Ascension. And so we now have possession of that in the Bodleian to curate it and look after it. And we built a whole programme around performing it with the Orchestra for the Age of Enlightenment on traditional instruments, with Judith Weir, who's the royal composer, did a piece to sort of introduce it, and then we did another Bach. And it was a wonderful, packed to the rafters in the Sheldonian last night, run by the cultural programme, that's our new cultural programme, a great, I think, example of what a university should be doing in terms of scholarship, curation, education, public outreach, and just moving things forward. And again, there's so much we can do around that. I'm very, very excited about the cultural programme. So the research is going gangbusters. We are taking on the global challenges. One of the things I've set from my start to the university is we need to really step up to the climate problem, because one, we have the breadth and depth across our 4 divisions or 5 divisions in this space. We are unusually we have an unusual wealth in talent around understanding climate in its entirety. So whether that's the physicists in the Maths and Physical Sciences division thinking about the physics modelling, my husband's been one, he was one of the early provers of the fact we were warming up, and so he's followed that journey. We've got chemists developing new green chemistry, we have engineers coming up and material scientists with completely novel batteries, developing lithium-air batteries, we hope, all that sort of good stuff. We've got the medical school, global health, our global health researchers now actively thinking about the lens by which people are really waking up to the fact that global warming really is a problem because of the health problems that it's bringing, overheating and deaths with that, infectious diseases shifting into countries that have never dealt with certain infectious diseases. And so what do we need to do to address that? We have, of course, lots of people in the Black School of Government, the business school, policies, other things that are thinking about how do we engage with the public to, again, address the climate problem. And in our humanities, we have people in history and English who have been studying and thinking about climate and thinking about, you know, historically, the relationship that humans have always had about abusing energy. Back in the day, it was slaves. These days, it's fossil fuel. What does that mean? And these are the things we're teaching our students in this climate colloquium. So we've got depth and breadth in this space, and everybody's driven by their PI, curiosity-led individual research groups. But my challenge to that group across the whole collegiate university is, surely if we all got all the key professors together, there's about 25 key professors who run all the different sections of that, can we agree that there's some things in the 0 to 5 and 5 to 10, if we really just put our shoulder to the wheel, we could actually take on and solve? And what would it be? And who would we have to partner with to do it? Because the thing that I keep pointing out to colleagues in the university is again, not only are we privileged because of the talent pool we've got and the freedom we have to do discovery research and apply it, we also aren't subject, like some of you who work in the private sector, to an annual shareholder return. We're not subject, like government is, to being elected every 5 years. I mean, I have a term, but, you know, that's it. We're very free. So actually, and we naturally operate on a global level, a big place like Oxford does, even though we're geographically placed. So actually, we're in a unique position to take on some of the global challenges that, quite frankly, have been very difficult for governments or the private sector to take on themselves because of some of those constraints. We don't have those constraints. So come on, guys, let's step up and do it. And what does that look like? So we've been having those convening sessions. We're bubbling through what that might be. It's not to say that they all have to down tools on their day job and all focus on this. It's just you carry on doing what you're doing. But actually, can we all agree, if you wanted me to go and get some fundraising, or we wanted to recruit certain things, or we want to collaborate with, say, Stanford or MIT or whoever, or Cambridge, what it might be, what is it that we need to do to actually take this on? And let's think about what it is we can deliver. And that's both the biodiversity benefit as well as the solutions around climate. So we're very excited about that. We've managed to move the United Nations Climate as a Human Right annual event to Oxford. So on June the 6th, we will be hosting a 2-day bonanza where we'll be really putting a spotlight on climate. Our hub ambition to be, again, a centre point for that. And we're having a 24-hour sort of share it around the world, going around with the Universities Alliance of Climate Research Universities, where we'll pass the baton on and we'll do a 24-hour academic content. We're going to have a load of sort of glitterati and stars coming and a concert and things. So we'll really make a splash to get the sort of conversation going again about the fact that we do have a climate problem. We needn't be, nervous about how calamitous it's going to be, because we actually can. There are solutions that we can come up with and deliver. And I hope that you're pleased that your university has taken the decision that we're going to step up and really try and fast track this now and do it. So we're very excited about that. And that's something, again, that you will hear more of. We have another really exciting thing around the research, which touches on innovation, which is something I've been very vocal about, as Sarah knows, since I've started my tenure. And it's around the fact that we are really, really good at sort of when we want to impact the world with our research, the fastest way actually to do that is through spin-outs or through licensing, is to actually bolt that onto the private sector and to really just make that happen. And so when I grew up as a scientist in Oxford, it was a dirty word to talk about entrepreneurship, albeit you were treated as if you were sort of letting the side down or bailing out if you went and did that. And there were a few brave souls who did go and form companies, and actually I always found them very inspiring as tutors and lecturers. It couldn't be more different now. The fact that this wonderful ancient college, the wonderful College of Christchurch, is giving one of its houses to inculcate more entrepreneurship, well, that just tells you everything. We've completely changed. Over 25% of our students are now actively engaged in some version of entrepreneurship and spin-out. We spin out 25 to 30 companies a year from the university. We're actually again, for several years in succession, despite what you hear about Cambridge, which is lovely, and we like Cambridge, although they keep beating us in the rowing, which don't start me on that. But, actually, and they do obviously great innovation things, but actually we beat them, and we're really good at this. We just don't, again, you haven't heard about it because it's not something we sort of talk about. Anyway, so we are brilliant at innovation. We're brilliant at spin-out. We're brilliant at licensing. We had more license at MIT the past few years. We are really good at this. And people want to do more of it. Our academics want to do more of it. Our students want to do more of it. So we need to create environments to make that happen. And so I was involved last year for the previous government, Jeremy Hunt, to do a report for them, which I co-wrote with venture capitalist Andrew Williamson from Cambridge, investment company, to talk about how can we drive economic growth in this country through innovation, spin-out, through the university sector. And we came up with a list of recommendations, which now I'm pleased to say, a year and a bit on, over 50 universities now have adopted all those changes. And it's to make us more competitive. It's to make us more realistic with what it is in the global context, particularly the US, we need to be doing if we're going to actually compete to get the capital. So we're brilliant at this. My vision is, a 50-mile innovation ecosystem around Oxfordshire that's built on the brilliant research that we're doing, that's built on new opportunities that we have in our ecosystem, which is this Ellison Institute of Technology. I'll mention a little bit more about that momentarily, that will be part of that new announcement that you've heard. Couldn't be more thrilled about the Oxford Growth Commission. Couldn't be more thrilled about, again, the ARC that will connect us to Cambridge. So the prize for us in this country, and it's a bold decision for this government, I applaud them, for them to say, actually, we're going to sweat the assets. At the end of the day, we've got 2 amazing global universities. So let's just stop messing around and let's really help use them. So let's build this ARC. Let's actually have the physical golden triangle rather than just the virtual one. Let's get the railway going. Let's get those universities to, both in their own ecosystems, continue to breathe and grow, so that we can fulfill my ambition for our growth potential and our contribution to the local region. But if you bolster it onto Cambridge and you bring in London, honest to God, that's a supercluster that I don't see anywhere in the world beating. We will be hands down the best in the world. You have the global city of London, 2 great ancient universities with constant stream of brilliant talent coming through, nice part of Britain to live in, generating wealth for the country, generating opportunities to connect from America out into Europe. Honestly, we are positioned and poised, and that's the prize, and that's what we're working really hard to deliver on. And I couldn't be more thrilled that after 2.5 years of going on and on about this and doing the report and etc., we've got this extra sort of steroidal boost from the government by having the Growth Commission now to really help us with the housing and the sewage and the water and all the stuff that slows you down, as well as the ARC and that vision shared. And it is our job to make sure that delivers for the country, because that's our responsibility. We must do that whilst also solving the global challenges. So the innovation piece is just enormously exciting. It's taking off at great pace now, particularly with extra effort. We're in very close touch with the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology and Patrick Vallance, and working really closely with him. We're putting some of our people into comment and his team. It's a really exciting time, and it just means that the culture of that is just now being more impregnated through the university. But we have to think about how do we help our faculty walk that path, and so therefore we need to challenge ourselves. How does tenure look like going forward in the future? It can't just be the model that it is at the moment. We have to allow our faculty to have more what I call permeable career tracks, and that's how the university needs to think about itself going forward, because the best and the brightest will want to have a blend of all this. And this isn't just life sciences and physical sciences. Before somebody says, what about the humanities? 20% of our spin-outs are actually social sciences and humanities, right? We have the highest women founders, 9% UK average, 19% in Oxford. That's not good enough, but there's a whole story there. It's like being back in academia 50 years ago, the whole innovation for women. But we're doing really well because we have programs that we're improving diversity and entrepreneurship, and we put our brilliant women professors who are running 3 or 4 companies on the side as visible role models for our young faculty to be inspired by. So that's why, visibility matters, and that's brought certainly, that success rate up from 9 to 19%. But we have to allow our academics to have a flexible career such that they can, at times we're research intensive and teaching intensive, and the combination of the two. At times they just need to be allowed out so they can go and run their company part-time or full-time, but come back in again. Back in the day, it's very rigid. If you're out, you're out. You're never back in. We just can't hold on to the best talent or retain or attract the best talent if we don't allow for more fluidity between it. So permeability, a different way of thinking about tenure track, a more flexible way of thinking about it is, again, how we will have to equip ourselves going forward if we're going to realise that enormous ambition that we have and the prize that can deliver, again, not just for the university, not just for the impact we can make, but also, for the country at this point in time. The final piece, I'm just very momentarily on this one because we're sort of at time, is just around the sort of leadership role that a voice like Oxford has on a platform. I'm very mindful in my role that I have a privileged platform upon which when I say something, it will be picked up by the press, whether I like it or not. And I'm not shy, as you know, of speaking out about things, and I'll always be a champion for the sector as well as flying the flag for the collegiate university. But it is a really important role. Of course, we have got a wonderful new Chancellor, absolutely delighted, that William and Fionn, they've just, really devoted alumni and really enjoying the roles so far. He's getting around as much as he can, having endless dinners, the poor guy, to sort of see everybody and getting up to speed. And he's just going to be a terrific champion and a voice as well for talking about the role of universities and their importance in society. So we have a leadership role. You all have a leadership role. You are ambassadors, whether you like it or not, of us. You do reflect our values. You do reflect the university. And I thank you for that, but I also encourage you to use the platforms you have and the voices you have to speak for the importance of higher education and learning and perpetual curiosity and pure just knowledge discovery for its own sake, as well as, of course, for applied sake, to make sure that you excite people, whether it's in your local school or communities or in whichever way you can, to think about, again, the benefits that bring, but also, dinner parties in the workplace. When there will be, I fear, in the coming years, further headwinds beyond the ones that we've been facing around inflation and national insurance hikes and cost of energy and etc. The more, those are just practical things we just rally to and sort. The worrying ones is the stealth of not wanting knowledge. Going back to the medieval, let's go and burn the books. The first thing you do is you go back in and you burn the books. And the modern equivalent of that is you just take down data sets. We're seeing this happening. I don't want to get into the deep politics, but we don't know the half of actually how difficult it is for colleagues at the moment in the academic sector in the US. And we're not immune to that in this country. So this is the time where we have to stand up and we have to do a better job at communicating why we matter and why we're here. I ask you respectfully to help us with that in any and whichever role you have, to be those ambassadors and to be those champions and to get the message out, because this is going to be a really important thing to do going forward if we're going to be have the surety of having world-leading institutions that do benefit society and be there for the next 500 years, as I know Christchurch will be. So with that, I will stop and very happy to take any questions. No questions are off limits. There's lots of topics I haven't covered, but very happy to. And I'll come and sit down with Sarah now.
Thank you so much, Irene. It's so wonderful to hear your passion for all the things that Oxford University is. And as a head of house, it's particularly important to me that you have come to this role from a collegiate background. You feel passionately about Merton, your own college, and you were the warden there before you became Vice-Chancellor, and it makes a really big difference as a head of house to have someone who understands the core of the collegiate university. One of the things that happened early in your tenure is you were involved in the opening of a new college in Oxford.
Yep.
Does your very generous donors called the Reuben Brothers appointing a new graduate college, is your vision that we as a university support these historic institutions that have been there for 500, 750 years? Yeah. Or do you think Oxford has the space and the capacity to have more colleges?
Yeah, so to answer you very briefly, yes, we do have the need and we have the capacity to have more colleges, and we have plans afoot for that. I'll be very open about that. Up the hill, which is where I worked at the hospital, on the Warnford site, we own all the land there. The psychiatry hospital is a very, very old-style psychiatry department, utterly not fit for purpose, but it lends itself to being a stunning college, and we have a desperate need to have more graduates and more opportunities for the medical school. So the current plan would be that we'd create a neuroscience campus, we'd have a brand new fit-for-purpose psychiatry hospital, and we'd convert that, and we have a donor that's very generously keen to support that mission. And we have to, and it very much is around the graduates as well that we're expanding. That's mostly where we're creating new colleges, is to supply that graduate need. And that's been a real shift for the university. You know, we were very much an undergraduate university when I was an undergraduate back in 85, 89, and I've watched the university become equally graduates and undergraduates. And of course there's a constant debate, should we just become a graduate institution? We'll never become a graduate institution, because I think we're all very passionate and very clear about our purpose and the importance of teaching, that you are a teaching and a research university. So I hope that my successors don't take us down that route, but in the short term we will absolutely be putting more colleges in, and there are donors that are very willing to do that. Now in parallel, we're also working, and it's not for public announcement, but we're working very actively, and we have some success stories to come to announce, where we are working to support those colleges that don't have endowments, and it would really help them, because it would give them the breathing space to then be able to focus new development fundraising for other benefits to bring to the students and to the faculty, so we can level things up a little bit between the experiences. And we're working very closely, and I'm very committed to that. Having been born from the college model, I recognise the problem. I recognise the benefits that as a university, as the Vice-Chancellor in fundraising, we can bring to that. And we're doing well in that regard, all I will say. So, dual thing. absolutely we've got to help. There's about 6 colleges, I think, that we know will benefit from an injection of an endowment, and that will get them up and going. And we will work hard, and I'll continue to work hard to try and get through as many of them as I can. And then in parallel, certainly there's in the short term an immediate plan for another graduate college. And then, of course, we have private halls, and we have other places that aren't full colleges yet that has the aspiration to become a college. So that would be another third way that we could do that. Yeah.
So questions from the floor. There are roving microphones.
Ryan Lee, Experimental Psychology 2002. Thank you, Professor Tracey, for a really inspiring talk. You touched a few times on AI. I'm interested in how is AI changing the landscape of the way things are done at Oxford, and how will it change, and how will the university need to adapt in the next 5, 50 or 500 years?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I sort of was a bit facetious when I said people talk about AI is going to democratize education, and it's a lovely catchphrase. I'm not sure what that means. So there are several things to say in that regard. Obviously, our mathematicians are developing the next generation of algorithms that support the machine learning and background parts of some of the AI. So we're deeply involved in the research of AI. We're deeply involved in the ethics of thinking about it. We're deeply involved in applying it in novel drug design and chemistry, and in reading manuscripts and things. So it's an active part of our research portfolio. We also very quickly set up tools to support our students, right from the first version of ChatGPT, to make sure they understood how to use it well. There was no denying they're going to use it, and so we may as well just embrace that's the world, it's not going back. And luckily, they still write their exams, bar a few, so they can't cheat in the exams at this point because it's still handwritten, although we are moving a little bit to tablets. So we sort of slightly avoided that particular problem that some universities had. So really quickly trying to sort of make sure the students were using it well, understanding the traps and the errors. The faculty were very nervous because, of course, the students were well at the gate using it, and they just felt very de-skilled. So we also set up an AI learning hub, which we have, where faculty can get up to speed and just feel confident about, as a tutor, what this means and how they're using it. There is an opportunity to think about how in 100 years, language, let's go with that. One of the advantages, if we go back to the rankings where I started, that other universities see happen is if they start to offer degree courses in English, you attract a much wider base and a talent pool that really contributes and helps your ranking. So it's a very popular thing to do. And of course, English is a dominant language. Well, you go to a world in 100, 200 years where you just got an earbud in and the lecturer's talking to you and you've got a room full of people with 150 languages. It won't matter so much. And that can be online or whatever. So that's a sort of obvious one. I do sometimes jest when people say, the trick of AI in teaching is it's when it's really good, it can, when you're teaching, you want to push somebody, not too much that they completely just think, I haven't got it and fail, but not enough that they're bored. So there's this gap where you want to push them that I think I got it, and then when they get it, it's really exciting. You all know that moment. It's rewarding, and that's the gift of a good tutor. And of course, AI can do that. It can take your learning rate and it can then deliver it online to you at that. Well, I sort of joke, well, isn't that what we've been doing for 1,000 years in the tutorial? It's what we do in the tutorial. In a lecture, when I still teach the medics, I still do the lectures for medics, I don't do tutorials anymore. I didactically give it on pain and they listen, and they're all going to have different capacities of absorption. In a tutorial, you're doing something very different. You are learning with the learning rates of your tutees. So I've been facetious. We sort of have been using AI without realizing it. But there are some real benefits for it. Where I'm worried, so this is my admission, is in some of our subjects, and again, I'll go to the sciences because it's most obvious there, physics and maths and engineering, where coding is a part of what they're learning. And part of the coding is not just learning how to code in the boring script. It's quite conceptually, mathematically, they'll be doing things that are hard, and they might have a problem set that would take them a couple of days to work through, and that's really good for the brain because they're having to think about it, and as a neuroscientist, you're still wiring up a lot. This is a very critical window still where you're really making that brain as plump as you can in terms of wiring it. Well, to be honest with you, you could spend 2 days trying to code in Python that thing, or you could do it in 15 minutes and go to the college bar. And guess what they're choosing to do? So what are you going to do with the 2 days they now have free? the challenge, I think, for us as a sector, which we haven't met, is the pace that this is hitting us is so fast. We can't catch our breath to put something else in place. So, we don't know what the cost is going to be intellectually for society by having lots of people not learn those skills. And I'm just picking coding as one, but you could imagine how that can extrapolate. Whilst it brings these huge benefits, suddenly now people who've never coded in their life can just code and benefit their topic. I've talked to some historians recently, and they're now doing things which they never thought they could do because they can now code because it's all easy to handle. So there's swings and the roundabouts, but what we need to do as educators is realise in our courses, in our degree courses, where are now the speed at which this has come in is going to really fundamentally change how we think about what the course content is and how we're going to make those kids be stretched intellectually. And then as a society, we have to all accept, are we just in a whole new place where we just have to accept actually quite a lot of stuff will just be done by it? Now that frees us up. Do we go back to a sort of quite nice 18th century model where we all become polymaths and we have more time to, read things and get in touch with nature? That could be a very nice life to go back to. So it's not all bad. But right now, those are some of the ways we've been addressing it, using it, but also what I'm worried about with some of our course content.
That's really helpful. Let's take another question.
Hi, David Wheeler, chemistry, 1978, working under Professor Richard Wayne, who was an atmospheric chemist, of course.
And who lived at 37 St. Giles.
Oh, right, so appropriately enough. I just think everyone's probably interested in what are the leading 2 or 3 areas of climate science that you think Oxford's going to hit the ball out of the court with between Oxford, Cambridge and London, or just Oxford.
All right, okay. I do think we're very, very good at batteries, and there is a big push for sort of lithium air to be developed, and that could transform aviation. There's a lot of discussion around how in the current time, and I'm not just saying this because this has been sort of something my husband subsequently sort of championed, but the reality is, time is ticking, and we are warming up at an accelerating rate. We can't build these alternatives at the pace, and we just have to get real that we are still using more oil than we ever have, so we're evidently not very good at weaning off it. So there's still going to be a time to wean off, but what we need to do is not make that use of oil contribute any worse. And the way to do that is you've got to capture the CO2 and sequester it and get rid of it. So geological solutions will be another one. It's an unpalatable one, but frankly, we just have to look at the data and just be really honest about where we are and the time we've got left and what is the pragmatic unpalatable. And therefore, we've got to work with the industry because they've got the skills to do it, and we've got to just not make it any worse. And cooling's another one. I mean, this is a really interesting because, again, we're going to have to cool people a lot because that's killing a lot of people. And you don't want to make it worse because it's energy costly to cool. So that's where batteries, that's where nuclear power, that's where fusion, we're doing a lot of fusion physics. I'm not holding my breath for the fusion, if I'm honest with you. Let's see, but yeah, probably not in the short term. So I think we can contribute in the battery space. I think we can contribute in some of the sort of novel, unpalatable solution space. We're doing a lot in chemistry and green chemistry, and that, of course, will be a different way of using chemistry, and that's more sort of going to contribute around how we sort of think about better use of plastics and other ways that we are more efficient and not making the chemistry of the world, because everything we're wearing is a lot of chemicals, how we can do that without causing carbon. We've got real experts in that area. So if I had to pick 3-ish, obviously I'm skipping biodiversity and all that side of things, but the Ellison Institute, which I skipped over, new big institute funded by Larry Ellison, founder of Oracle, £1.5 billion investment, our former Regis Professor of Medicine from Christchurch, is the president of it. We're working very closely alongside. They're funding a lot of studentships for us, which is wonderful. And they're working on 4 themes, very connected with us, lots of really, really good interrelations and things. And it's basically food security, so it's agri-tech on a massive scale. It is energy solutions in terms of novel ways that we can solve that. It is around health and preventative health and vaccines will be a thing. And then it's sort of world peace. It's democratic resilience, that type of thing. And we're very, very enmeshed with academics who, and what's wonderful for the innovation piece of that is that you're bringing in several thousand people of high talent. So we're retaining people that we'd lose, we're attracting back people we've lost, and we're bringing people I've dreamt to bring into my ecosystem. They can pay them a lot more than I can. So, but all of them have a percentage foot in the university so we can count them towards our research exercise, for instance. It's a win-win-win. And it means that in our ecosystem, we've got this walloping talent base who will, if they then move on for the Edison, they're in our ecosystem and they might come and work in some of the companies, and that's how we hold on to them. Because the biggest problem we've got with the innovation piece is whilst we're doing brilliantly and we're building these companies, when it comes to the 5 to 10 year growth, phase B, we're losing them from Britain because of 3 reasons. Capital is all in the US, and that's largely that's funding them. So the moment they're invested in, already the American venture capital is saying you should move to America, you should list on NASDAQ. So we lose them because of the lack of capital. We've got plenty of capital in this country, but it's not been invested in because planning, you can't wait 3 years if you're going to be competitive. We have planning restrictions and delays that are unacceptable, and we don't have the talent. There just isn't enough people to run the companies. Hence why we've got to have more talent come in. That's hence why we've got to have international people come in. We can't do the great growth superpower thing. Who's going to do it? We've got to build our own pipeline of people, and we've got to help with that for sure. But if we want to do it at pace, then we've got to think about where are these people coming from? And that's why we lose these companies. So publicly funded university, charity, we're working our socks off to make all this happen. And then just when they go big and they could give back to this country and to university, we lose them. And they go and give all their tax to America. That is tragic, and it's got to stop. So Ellison, these types of anchor institutions that are coming into our ecosystem, hugely important because it brings a talent pool.
One more quick question.
Yeah, all right. Stop. Yeah. Who are we going to pick?
Thank you very much. The growth agenda, the Oxbridge growth agenda is very exciting. But I wonder if you could say something about the university's intentions and responsibility to deal with the infrastructure problems and the people upon whom growth is being thrust. The lack of infrastructure and the lack of social housing. And that's a really big problem. I'd be really interested.
Oh, I'm so glad that you've asked that question. We talk a lot about inclusive innovation, and that's our philosophy. So we want to do the innovation piece, not just, again, life sciences, deep tech. We want to embrace the humanities and creative arts, but we also want to do it in an inclusive way. And we're learning a lot what hasn't been done well that I've observed in Boston and Kendall Square and in Silicon Valley. So one, unaffordable for any postdocs. So that's not going to help a university if people can't afford to live. I am Town and Gown, so I grew up in a little village just outside of Oxford. It matters to me, and right from the start, I cared about the fact we had to be a much better civic university, local university. That's why I appointed a local global officer to work on local relations. And so we are on this. You can go on the website. There's a document that's called Beyond Town and Gown. It's our 2 years of work that we've been doing to engage with the local community, sharing what the colleges are doing, like their outreach work. And it summarises a lot of what we're doing and, again, helps with the storytelling. It's also, we've been doing a lot more listening as about where are we a real pain in the neck for you, where we make the traffic worse, we make the cost of living worse, we make getting into a school worse and going to a GP. These are the things that annoy people, and I totally get it. So we are absolutely committed as part of this Oxford Growth Commission and the ARC and my innovation group that I have is we talk about inclusive innovation and how we take the lessons learned from the US, we don't repeat them here, and we have to do it such that it is done that everybody is we won't succeed that everybody's going to be happy, but my goal is that people, do feel it, that this is a net benefit for them. This is a net thing that will make their lives better. And when I see the local people turning up with a University of Oxford t-shirt or baseball hat to our varsity, honestly, that's a barometer for me that we now are a positive presence. We don't have that in our region. So that's my challenge to myself. So we're trying the best we can and keep asking me that question because I need to have my feet held to the fire to deliver on that.
Thank you very much.
We promised that we would finish promptly as advertised, so thank you so much for coming to listen to this first of our 500th anniversary lectures. An enormous thank you to Irene for talking with such passion about all aspects of the university and about exciting science, new developments, but also as an historian and theologian, thank you so much for saying so much about the importance of the humanities and the visible investment in the humanities in Oxford. As I already said, this is just one of a series of public lectures that we're running. They will all be live streamed. I hope you'll be able to come to others, and I hope also that you'll watch them. A big thank you to the Royal Society for hosting us tonight and making things run so smoothly. An enormous thank to our development team. A great deal of work goes in behind the scenes organising an event like this. Thank you so much for making it such a big success. There's lots more of 2025 and our 500th anniversary to come. We're holding a themed Tudor event on the Meadow in July, which is open to the whole of the Oxford community. Brilliant. A little bit of our giving back to the local community. On the Saturday nearest to the date at which Wolsey signed his charter, creating Cardinal College on the 28th of June, we're going to have a celebration of solemn vespers in the cathedral, a service which will include a world premiere of a newly commissioned Latin Magnificat by the Master of the King's Music, Erlyn Wallen. There'll be a series of exhibitions and talks in the library and the picture gallery. There's going to be an amazing concert hall in the Schwartzman Centre, but the 12th century cathedral remains an amazing music venue, and we're going to have a festival of music in the cathedral in the autumn. All these events are going to bring students, staff and alumni, but also the wider Oxford community, the people among whom we live and work, into Christchurch to help us celebrating our 500 years of history. If you haven't been to Christchurch for a while, or if you've never been before, please do come and help us celebrate this important 500th anniversary. But please join me in thanking Irene again very much for leading us this evening.